Today I'm going to do something that I hope is relatively educational for everybody. I'm going to take and show you how to use the Decade Driving Targets or Google Earth to analyze a golf course for any upcoming tournaments you got. So next week is the PGA Championship at Valhalla. I'm going to show you kind of the thought process I go through when I'm looking at this stuff through the satellites. Again, what we're trying to do is play a very efficient practice round. It's not necessarily about like actually tightening in our strategy perfectly because we don't know how fast the course is going to be playing. We don't know which way the wind's going to be blowing. There's just a number of things we have to get actually on site in order to really tighten in our decisions. But you want to be showing up kind of ready to be making as good of decisions as final of decisions as possible, even before you play your practice round. So one thing I also want to show you though, because we're going to use just Will Zalatoris's Decade account to show you exactly how to use the driving targets, but I just want to show you one thing. Look at how many rounds of golf this guy entered over the course of his college career and while he was out on the Korn Ferry Tour. These top players, they're putting in effort that not very many other people are. I've got very similar players like this. I mean, I can't even tell you how many on the PGA Tour that enter their rounds exactly like this all the way through college, through their Korn Ferry Tour. So yes, it's a little tedious, but you've got to get data on what your strengths and weaknesses are. Anyways, let's move on to how to actually use the Decade driving targets. Again, obviously I'm going to show you how to do this in the Decade app, but for those of you that aren't members, you're welcome to use this information into Google Earth and do it yourself. So here when you've launched the Decade app, you've obviously got all of your tutorial content, stats, and everything else. And then when we go to the driving targets feature, we're going to find Valhalla, which is right there. I'm going to set the shot patterns at 365, 270, and 60 for like a 3-wood, and then 240 and 50 for like a long iron. The only tee box they're playing different is number 2 at 500 yards. The rest of them are all the way to the back. And then once we click launch, it takes us into the driving targets. I click on tee shot, and it always defaults to whatever the longest one is or what you were using on the last hole. So this hole, they've added a new tee box that's there since the satellite images have been updated. But what we want to be looking for is this edge right here is kind of where the hay starts at Valhalla. And honestly, this is obviously a very well-designed golf course. It's pretty cool, but I definitely cannot have any part of my shot pattern into that. So I'm going to line this up roughly to where the edge is around there. We don't want to miss tee shots on the inside of dog legs because when you're on the inside of dog legs, you're always going to have more trees to go through, but that's going to be better than the potential lost ball or anything else over here. This is just not going to be very pretty or playable. So the first hole, nothing too interesting, just a dog leg right or dog leg left rather par 4. It's going to leave you, 180, 200 yards into the green. Again, nothing too interesting to really think about on this hole. Second hole, go to tee shot. Now this one is pretty interesting. Excuse me. For players that hit it pretty far, it's 300 to carry this bunker, and I'm assuming that this is going to be kind of downhill. This is all kind of even on the Google Earth satellite images right now, it's cut out. So I don't know what they're trying to do here. They clearly have a little bit of trouble with growing grass here. I'm sure there's a lot of cart traffic or something around there. But for guys that carry it over 300, this starts to get really narrow up here. Now, we don't want to shift our shot pattern too far to the left because now we're just in the rough all the time. We're in the hazard some. So for guys that carry it over 300, this is going to be an interesting decision. They will want to potentially consider dropping back to 3-wood. So I've got that at 270 and 300. That's going to try to start removing this bunker. If we go back much further than that, like all the way down to an iron, man, there's going to be times when we or miss the fairway and we are just absolutely dead back here at 240, 250. At least the 3-wood's going to carry up here a little bit further. It's still a little bit wider. So most of these guys are going to try to hit this tee shot about 270-ish, I believe. Third hole, just a par 3, nothing interesting. Always do want to just make sure, note that if there's water right up to the green, that we kind of know we want to be aiming a certain amount at a minimum away from that water. So that would be the baseline number plus another 3, at least away from that water. So even if the pin's on the left-hand side, we don't want to ever encroach past the math that would keep us pushing away from the right-hand side. Again, that would probably make more sense for Decade members, but I'm just going to kind of leave that there. Tee shot, spin this guy around. This one's an interesting decision here. If we go all the way out to 300, we start to run out of fairway. This only leaves us 50 or 60 yards to the green, but we're starting to run out. So guys that hit it 290 or 300, depending on the conditions, depending on the wind, I definitely would have them go ahead and hit driver. The closer we are, even out of the rough, the better off we're going to be. If we drop back to 270, that's a pretty big carry for most guys, 3-woods, to take this bunker out of play. And this is, I really like this hole. You've got to carry it a certain amount on the left-hand side, but if you carry it that far on the left-hand side, then that just means the bunker and the right's in play. And the main question we've always got to ask ourselves in tee shot strategy is, what's the alternative and what does it accomplish? Yes, the bunker is in play with driver for most guys, but to be perfectly honest, both bunkers are probably in play for most of the guys when they drop back to 3-wood. Either this one from not carrying or this one from running out, again, depending on conditions. So I would say if you hit it under 300 with the speed of the course and the conditions taken into consideration, this is definitely just send driver and see what happens. If you're going to carry it over 270 for sure with conditions, then I would probably drop back to whatever that club, if that's 3-wood or mini driver or whatever. Number 5, here you make sure we're always on the 300 because it defaults back again to whatever your last distance was on the prior hole. Interesting one. Again, this is very similar to Bethpage Black in my opinion. Bethpage is just 18 straight holes where it's 60 or 65 yards from the hay on the left to the hay on the right. And this one's going to be about 60 yards. But what I want to look at in something like this, unless you carry it over 300, which if you do, that means you're going to carry it past this side of it. But it also means you're going to carry it past that bunker and everything. So we would want to start shifting our shot pattern a little further to the right potentially. These bunkers are acting as catcher's mitts, but if we drop back to where 3-wood is, again, both bunkers are in play, the rough's in play, your second shot's just longer. The geometry of the hole, the further right we can take it off the tee, the more distance we're actually taking off. So this is getting narrow, yes, but I would have my players that carry it under 300 hitting it right on this line, and my players that carry it over 300, maybe just another 5 or 6 yards further right. So notice how we can start using this edge of the bunker. That's kind of really where we want to be basing our alignment off of. And again, alignment just being a generic word in this situation. The center of your shot pattern, if you were hitting balls on a driving range, and let's say there was a teaching center on the other side of the range, and you're just hitting at the left edge of the tee box, you would visualize the left edge of the tee box right here. So now if your body lines are left because you're playing a fade, or if your body lines are right because you're playing a pull fade or a draw, whatever, you just want to do whatever you do to orient yourself to your ultimate target the exact same way. So left edge of this bunker and send it. Now there's no reason to think don't go left or don't go right anymore. We've picked a good target. We're committed to it. The vast majority of bad shots come from a lack of commitment to your ultimate target. Number 6, this one also, again, I really like this course. Driver, obviously too much, 300 yards to get through the fairway. 270, it's a little narrow. I mean, we've got junk on the left here and junk on the right. It starts to really cut in here, it looks like. This is, again, in your practice round, what you really want to be looking for. But if we drop all the way back to 2-iron, the apex is going to be right in the middle of this tree. So that's not a good shot. I mean, a good decision. Yes, we could maybe hit a roasted cut around it depending on the speed of the fairways. But for the most part, unless you're going to be hitting your 3-wood up over 300 yards, I think most of these players will be doing best trying to hit it about 270 or 280 total, maybe in that 260-ish carry type range. So we don't have to worry about carrying it into this junk up here on the right. Here we go. This is the fun one. Now we're going to look at 365 yards wide. We've got junk on the right of the cart path. We've got a creek on the left. This is a pretty wide area for driver, but it's going to leave you 277. So most guys are going to be kind of struggling to get home in 2 if they go ahead and go up the right. But look what we got up here to the left, and this is perfect width for this decision. It's just under, it's probably 57 or 8 yards wide total, depending on how steep this bank on the right is. But it takes you from 280 down to 237 to the middle of the green. So you really can start to get an iron in your hands. This is a decision that if it's downwind, I'm definitely doing it. Downwind's going to tend to straighten out your tee shots. If it's into the wind, I'm probably going to go over here because I've got to hit a really good tee shot, and then I've got to hit a really good second shot to gain much. If it's into the wind, I would probably start going over here. And if it's any kind of a crosswind, I would be a little more hesitant. If it was a fader and the crosswind is off the right to where it's just going to basically hit a dead straight ball, I would probably not have a problem with that guy doing it. But if it's a fader with the wind off the left, I'm certainly not going to have him hit a draw. I would tend to say, hey, you know what? This hole just doesn't sit up correctly for, well for you today. Let's just go ahead and take it out to the right, unless they've got a mini driver that they can draw and hold it against it and then get in that 250 range where they can still be roasting their longest iron out here to the right. Otherwise, we just want to play this thing out to the right, play it as a 3-shot hole. It just kind of is what it is. If we hit it in the rough or in this bunker, we've got bunkers all the way along the right. You don't have to do anything crazy here. We're 280 in here. We've only got to move this ball 120, 30 yards up the fairway in order to get a wedge-ish, something inside 150 of the green. If the lie is bad, do not try to force it up here. The heel can grab, yank it left in the water. You put it in these fairway bunkers, wind up with that 90 or 100-yard bunker shot that nobody wants. Again, proper golf is about trying to just really plod your way around, find your spots. Don't do stupid stuff when you're out of position or the hole just doesn't set up well for you for whatever reason, and just plod along. This is going to be a really fun hole to watch right here. I wish this was on the back 9-ish, maybe like 14, not too late in the round. Another par 3, nothing interesting, no water around it. Number 9 here, this is a good one. 9, we've got, again, just about the exact width we would want to be looking at. One of the arguments I get into all the time, or used to on Twitter, I quit Twitter, was with the architect community that's just saying, you can't boil down course management to a formula. And I'm like, well, you boiled down architecture to a formula. Notice, it's a very consistent number, getting about 65-ish yards between real trouble. We'll call that OB and water or fescue and fescue. Real trouble, they're not going to put it at 50 yards wide on a 500-yard hole. It just doesn't happen. It would be too penal. I say that. You do get that sometimes over in Europe, but those courses are very, very difficult to really navigate your way around correctly. So, all right, there we go. Good stuff. We could drop back to 3-wood. I definitely like this hole with 3-wood. We're taking it from a spot where, we're going to have 110 yards, and sure, we're taking it back to 145 or 50 ish, depending on, but we've got so much more width. So you don't hit your 3-wood any straighter than your driver in degrees offline, but it does go straighter because it goes shorter. But more importantly, the design of this hole, it is a lot wider back here than it is up here. So we really want to avoid these bunkers that are going to be leaving you with a gap wedge, sand wedge type shot in. And this one is just 270 all day off the tee. I'm going to leave it there for YouTube because I've obviously got to keep some stuff behind the paywall for my members. Hope that did teach you a little bit of something. If you use this in conjunction with the other video I've got in my YouTube channel, NGCAA driving video, just National College Golf Coaches video that I did forever ago. I just leave it with a terrible name because it's easily searchable. So if you go watch that, apply some of the logic to your own courses along with this right here, I really hope that'll help you. So Decade app, obviously, as always, we've got hours and hours and hours of tutorial content. We've got driving targets features like this. We've got free yardage books where these driving targets get superimposed into the book. It's just the best way to prepare for a round of golf. That's the whole reason we have a 93% renewal rate for our members. They just love preparing for golf courses and golf tournaments using the tools that we've provided for them. So I hope everyone gives it an opportunity, maybe gives it a test drive. I think it's a free 7 days trial. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that.